There is some brilliant modern art at TEFAF Maastricht 2025. Being a premier annual art event, TEFAF always has an impressive array of works by modern artists from Picasso to Warhol, as well as fresh works by some of the biggest name artists working today, all on the market. So let's start meandering through the modern galleries at TEFAF 2025. The first stop will be Landau Fine Arts. They always have a really impressive selection of works by big-name 20th century artists, and they have one of the most expensive pieces at TEFAF this year. This is Les Dormeurs, or The Sleepers by Pablo Picasso. It is an excellent example of the vivid, aggressive neo-expressionistic style he pursued late in life, having painted this in 1965. It is a creative and raw fusion depicting his final muse and second wife, Jacqueline Roch. This work was selected by Picasso's longtime dealer, Daniel Henry Kahnweiler, as an exceptional example of Picasso's style and genius, so he had this hanging behind his desk for years. The asking price for this painting started at $50 million US. Les Dormeurs is next to a bronze Jean Arp sculpture. Landau has many other interesting pieces worth taking a look at, including some more Picassos like this flower bouquet drawing. Across from that there's this little abstract Kandinsky drawing. This is La Célèbre Fatima et sa troupe, a bold colorful painting by Kees van Dongen from 1912. The belly dancer at the center is inspired by a dancer named Anita, who became one of the young artist's companions and models during his days in Montmartre. Here's an exquisite Fauvis work by André Durand from the mid-19-teens. It is a snowscape, which definitely does not radiate the same warmth as most of his works from this period. This is one of Giorgio de Chirico's Gli Archeologi pieces, highlighting the artist's return to classicism in the 1930s from his more so bizarre metaphysical works. Here's a cast of Max Ernst's sculpture Une Amie en Procès. Here's another Ernst, done in oil, plaster, and canvas on wood. Here's a dreamlike automatist composition of Yves Tanguy, with an unknown title from 1927. A bunch of Giacometti sculptures and paintings occupy one corner of the gallery. There are some of his iconic slender figures, though very tiny ones. There are also a couple of his monochronistic paintings. Giacometti pondered existentialist philosophies of his time, so with these portraits he poses whether we can truly see or know others. Here are 4 figurines on a pedestal by Giacometti. These skinny figures are intended to seem like a far-off mirage. Here is a colorful Spanish tanzarine or dancer by Alexei von Jelensky, done in 1909 in the midst of his involvement with Der Blaureiter group. That is a unique limestone sculpture by Henri Laurent. He is generally known for his cubist works. Here Paul Klee painted on a burlap sack. And that's a Matisse drawing. There is a huge Henry Moore sculpture of a mother and child on a block seat. Here the abstracted mother gazes upon her baby blob. It is impressive how Moore was able to convey a maternal bond through abstracted forms. This sculpture has sold. I wonder how much it will cost to ship this. There are quite a few figurative légers around this tiny Moore sculpture. That is The Family Group by Henry Moore. This first work by Fernand Leger is La Femme aux Clés, a woman with keys. I like this drawing of a Grand Parade from the early 50s. He did love a good circus. This is L'Équipe en Repos, some men resting with a bike. And this is a Leger still life, Le Compotier from 1948. While Landau's specialization stops before the emergence of pop art, Leger's Cubism was definitely a forerunner to pop. Last but not least for Landau, here's another work of Pablo Picasso. This is a Femme dans une fauteuil, an abstract portrait of his lover Marie-Therese Walter, which he made just a month after meeting her in 1927. They had this here a couple years ago, so it is not sold. Applicat Présent has some neat works by mid-century European abstract artists. This is an excellent work of Karel Appel of the avant-garde Cobra group from 1953, definitely showcasing the cardinal tenets of the group like violent brushwork and vivid colors. Here's another Appel Tau Jacqueline Nu from the 60s. Here is Les Barques or The Barges by the prominent French abstract artist Nicolas de Staël from the 50s. That you may identify as a work by Yves Tanguy. It's even signed by him. However, it's not a real Tanguy, it's an appropriation. An artist named Oscar Dominguez mimicked his style, and with a surrealist it was common to collaborate on works or sign your name on someone else's piece, so this was probably made during World War II in an attempt to raise funds for resistance efforts. It was sold as a real Tanguy to get more money out of it. That's a Metamorphose Animale by André Masson. Here's a small Pierre Soulages from the 1950s. He was known for these thick black brushstrokes against lighter backgrounds, exploring texture and color. This is another de Staël piece from 1951 titled Composition Claire. You can really see his thick impasto style here. And this one is by Georges Mathieu, an action painter, so creating this piece was a performance in itself. Oh well, would you look at that? There's another Picasso. It's the Nu allongé et buste d'homme, or Long Nude and Bust of a Man from 1964. Here is a Basquiat and a Christo at Van de Weg. The Christo is an illustration from a 1968 project to wrap the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art, and this is a Basquiat sketch from 1982. Here's an untitled Keith Haring acrylic drawing from 1987. It appears to be a geyser bursting into 100 little detailed pictures in itself. This is a small circular abstract work by Joan Mitchell. The canvas is in the exact same shape as some of Claude Monet's water lily paintings. Mitchell was known to be heavily inspired by Monet, so it has been placed next to Roy Lichtenstein's Monet-inspired haystacks composed of Ben-Day dots. Here's a Magritte juxtaposed with a Calder. This is L'Invention du Feu by Rene Magritte from 1948. I suppose that nude woman is going mad. And here's a little metal and wire standing mobile by Alexander Calder. There's a pair of Warhol flower silk screens. That is from Jean Dubuffet's Parachiffre series. This is Dots Obsession by the Dots Obsessed Yayoi Kusama. It's a bit monochrome. A lot of her works are much more colorful. That is a small Gerhard Richter abstract piece from the 80s. And there's a Tom Wesselmann face in the corner. This dealer has new pieces by some of the most sought-after artists working today, like Anish Kapoor with this brand new dish. He often uses red like in this one, or sometimes he'll use Vanta Black, a color he legally owns. Here is a brand new mirror by the longtime Italian artist Michelangelo Pistoletto. There's a polyester sculpture by Hans Optebeek. There is an Ai Weiwei Lego painting this year. The experimental Chinese artist works with all sorts of mediums, but recently he seems to be using a lot of Lego bricks. This is a copy of a Guido Reni painting of Atalanta and Hippomenes. He often copies European masterworks in Lego. Right in front of that, there is a distorted cadaver-looking figure by Berlinda de Breikere. She uses wax, real human hair, and animal skins for these haunting works. Off to the side there's a little seated Buddha by Ai Weiwei. I just happened to be passing by another Warhol silkscreen in the corridor. That's fellow artist Josef Beuys. It seems Skarstedt has some good pieces. For example, a relatively small abstract canvas done by Joan Mitchell in the 70s. That's a Giacometti sculpture. This figure certainly expresses the post-war fragility he was trying to convey. And here's an authentic Yves Tanguy in all its weird biomorphic glory. This is a Bent Drinker by Georg Baselitz. Here is a Nicolas de Stael depiction of Paris at night from 1954. Definitely like that. Here's Warhol's take on a Picasso head. And here's yet another Calder. He called this the glassy insect back when it was created in 1953. This is another Rene Magritte, Les Grandes Beautés from 1965. Here is a stretched head fresh out of Jaume Plesnes's Barcelona studio. And here is a Cubist sculpture composition by Jacques Lipschitz. These hyper-realistic sculptures of naked ladies are by John de Andrea. There's a Barry Flanagan rabbit sculpture, perfect for your artsy garden. Waddington Casteau has a specialization in the Pontevin and Nabi artists. There's a Paul Seruzier scene of Breton Woman. That's a pastel of the opera singer Biana Duhamel by Edouard Villard. There are several other small Villard pieces in this gallery. There are also two works by Maurice Denis. That one of the woman looking through the window is pretty good. And here's a Pierre Bonnard study on a card. Here's an interesting lamentation of Christ by the symbolist Charles Filiger. This is a Max Ernst painting of La Horde from 1927. He made many different versions of this premonition of violence. And here's a Magritte called L'Île au Trésor with bizarre plant birds. That's definitely odd, I like it. That is Andy Warhol's portrait of Nico Williams, the singer for the Velvet Underground who performed in Warhol's Exploding Plastic Inevitable events. I am pleasantly surprised to see this here, a watercolor on paper by Edward Hopper. It is a characteristically simple and lonely scene of Gloucester houses, or houses on a hill, set in 1920s Gloucester, Massachusetts, a typical New England town. I have never seen a work by this fascinating 20th century American artist in Europe, and I don't know of any European museum collections that have his works. There are also several etchings by Edward Hopper, like this charcoal sketch of a house in Gloucester. His works often have a glaring sense of isolation emanating from them. I particularly like this one, Night Shadows. Here's a Louise Bourgeois drawing from the 60s. She is more so known for her giant spider sculptures. That's another Basquiat drawing called Asbestos. And here's another Nicolas de Stael piece on paper. Here are two classic Joseph Albers studies for the homage to the square from the late 1950s. There's a Rodin cast of the Age in bronze. I love the texture and blue tones on this Pierre Soulages painting from the 80s. Here's a good Kandinsky from 1948, composed of gouache and gold on black paper. That is a rather simple experimental piece by André Déron of a jetty at l'Estaque. Here is a nocturnal 1897 scene of Lake Como by the Belgian painter, William de Gouve de Nunca. Rushing over to lunch, I spotted an impressionist work in the corner of my eye. It turns out to be an Alfred Sisley scene from 1891. Below there's another cast of Henry Moore's Family Group. There's also a Sublime Camille Pissarro picture from 1881. I also spotted a Camille Claudel sculpture. It's a bronze version of L'Abandon, a rather erotic work she created during the height of her relationship with Auguste Rodin. Here is a painting by Alberto Savinio, the brother of Giorgio de Chirico. Here is some concept art by Christo for his wrapped Pont Neuf project from 1985, when he wrapped up the oldest bridge in Paris. Okay. I have now come to the Wienerbräuter and Kohlbacher Gallery, which specializes in Austrian modern art. This is one of the most unique and rare pieces at TEFAF this year. A painting by Gustav Klimt which has not been seen in well over half a century. It is the only known portrayal of a black person by Klimt, and this piece has a problematic history behind it. It is a seemingly dignified portrait of Prince William Ni Norte Douala from 1897. He was a member of the royal family of the Osu tribe in Ghana, but was brought over to Europe for display in a colonial exhibition at a human zoo exhibit. The Vienna Zoo at Schönbrunn Palace did reportedly invite representatives from the Osu tribe that year. Artistically, it is a rather realistic portrait. Klimt was classically trained, but the flower motifs in the background hint at how his style would evolve in the coming decade. That does lead one to wonder whether the prince volunteered or was forced to sit for this portrait while entrapped as a zoo exhibit. What's even more messed up is that this painting was owned by a Jewish woman who was forced to flee Vienna during the Nazi invasion, and this was confiscated. Her heirs later came to a restitution agreement for the sale of this painting. It's amazing to see in person. This is one of Klimt's sketch studies of Adele Bloch-Bauer, the subject of Woman in Gold. There are several Egon Schiele drawings available. These are the Three Graces by the leading Secession artist Koloman Moser. Here's an almost cubist architectural study by the one-of-a-kind expressionist Lionel Feininger from the 1940s. His works are quite rare to find. That is a Jean Cocteau designed Murano blown glass plate. And that's a glass plate designed by the rather racy Austrian expressionist Oskar Kokoschka. The AZ Fine Art Gallery has some of the most significant names in early modern French art, starting out with this Marc Chagall painting. Here is a Haïm Soutine work from 1918, called the Maison aux Toits Rouges derrière les arbres. I'm rather surprised to see one of his pieces here, as he destroyed many of his works. Another great piece is Kees van Dongen's Les Salons du Casino de Deauville, which captures the bourgeois extravagance of 1920s France in his avant-garde style. This is a family portrait by Pablo Picasso from 1951, showing him with his partner at the time, François Gillot, and their two children. I love this Raoul Dufy circus scene from the 30s. Like Van Dongen and Picasso, Dufy frequented the Parisian Cirque Medrano as an opportunity to study human movements, and in this he experimented with some seriously bright ochre pigments. There are some Chagall works on paper. Here's an excellent little Renoir from 1917. This one has sold here at TEFAF. You can tell that by the red dot sticker placed on the tombstone. There's a Renoir portrait alongside a pleasing Pissarro work. In this scene from 1884, his maid watches over his 2 children. And here's another small Renoir landscape being offered for nearly €1,000,000. This is a Pierre Bonnard bather scene from 1899. And no matter where you go, if there's a Bonnard work being shown, it's probably right by a work of his best friend, Edouard Villard. This one is titled La Ravaudeuse. These are some cool pieces by Ed Templeton, who is more famous as a skateboarder. That is a bronze sculpture by Kehinde Wiley. It is based on a 19th century French painting of a woman who had been bit by a snake, but here he replaces her with a black man who has been struck down in the streets. And this is a portrait done by Wiley in just the past couple months. Templon Gallery here has a good description of his works, stating that Wiley, quote, makes eroticized heroes of the invisible, those traditionally banished from representations of power. Here is a brand new work of Chiharu Shiota known as the State of Being. There's an old spindle surrounded by a box of red thread. Her large-scale immersion works using thread like this are absolutely incredible. Well, would you look at that? There's another Calder sculpture here. This one is B for Barney from the 1970s. There's a Richter abstract piece in the background. I stumbled upon a dealer with several pieces by the preeminent early German expressionist Ernst Ludwig Kirchner, who spearheaded the Die Brücke group. Most of these vivid works are from the 19-teens and 20s, the height of his experimentation and critiques of modern society through these colorful and often emotionally charged works. I like this historically inspired scene of Cleopatra and Antonius. Here are some works by the spatial artists Lucio Fontana and Yves Klein. Here's a big chunk of amethyst surrounded by a cloak, though it looks like the bottom half of a classical statue. Here are some Joan Miro etchings. That's an Andy Warhol screen print of actress Grace Kelly. This is an exploded skull by Damien Hirst composed of sterling silver. Here's a Warhol screen print series of Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, certainly appropriate for this fair happening in the Netherlands. Oh, and you know, there's just another Picasso. That's a distorted self-portrait by Francis Bacon, an etching done in 1983. Here is a concept drawing and plan by Christo for his Umbrellas project, in which a field of umbrellas 18 miles long and 1.5 miles wide were installed in California and Japan. They closed that installation early after an umbrella fell on a woman and killed her. And to finish out this year's TEFAF in a minimalistic fashion, here is the Nominal 3, a 1960s light installation by Dan Flavin, one of the most famous minimalists. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that look at the amazing museum quality modern art pieces available for purchase here at TEFAF 2025. If you did, then please check out my other videos featuring museums, art exhibitions, historic monuments, and more. I do have other episodes on TEFAF Maastricht 2025, including one focused on the European Old Masters works, and another highlighting the special installations and antique books. Additionally, there is a full tour video if you want to get the full experience. Those videos are all linked in the description. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate it, and thanks for watching.